We are back on Taking Care of Business on Current Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KERI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 3 times a week on the Internet across this great nation. We are very fortunate to have one of my favorite guests, Dr. Walid Phares, who's a consultant to Congress and the European Union and the author of several books. The last one I highly, highly recommend, The Lost Spring. So, Dr. Phares, when it comes to President Obama and his strategy for dealing with ISIS, we've had it now for a couple weeks. What do you think? Is it working, or is it a dismal failure?
Well, obviously it's not working, because now the summer has passed, the fall is passing, and ISIS is growing. That's practically a reality on the ground. Now, he tried to explain it that this is going to be a very long-range situation, meaning it's going to take years. But at the same time, Libya was done in 3 months, and Libya's regime has all the weapons of. So it's really about a political decision. And I think that the Obama administration wants to rely on forces on the ground, so it is not being seen as responsible for a military engagement on the ground, because from the air you could do some damage, but you cannot actually change realities on the ground. So the administration counts on the fact that the Iraqi army will be retrained, reorganized, that the Peshmerga Kurdish militias will also be supported somewhat, that they are going to find and identify and train Syria opposition, moderate people, and with this whole combo, Iraqi, Syrian, and Kurd, there could be a march against ISIS. Well, meanwhile, ISIS is growing, is doubling, is tripling. Instead of having 15,000 or 30,000, now they may mount to 70,000. And they are gathering their finances, and they are moving on the ground. So if you ask me, is it successful, I would say no. As a strategy, it's not successful. We have tactical successes. Yes, every day we're destroying a truck here, a jeep here. We're taking back one village, but then ISIS take it back. So we need to have an alternative strategy if we want to save these countries and also save our national security in the future, because a long-term ISIS presence in this area, imagine and project thousands of jihadists who are now fighting with them will be redispatched to the world. That's the real threat against our national security.
You say ISIS, the president said ISIL. Is there a difference?
No, really, actually, both are wrong. ISIS, it means Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and ISIL, Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. Now, without entering the debate about both words, the ISIS themselves, the IS, the Islamic State, the Caliphate, have changed their name. It's been now 2 months. They have declared themselves as the Islamic State, as the Caliphate. So I go with IS, Islamic State. Both terms are being used by the media and the others by the government, but both indicates that this is an Islamic State organization.
How long until they're flying the flag over the White House?
Well, they have done something with the iPhone, I guess. They flew an iPhone flag in front of the White House. No, I mean, what they're trying to say, the Islamic State forces, is that they have enough individuals, jihadists in the West and in the United States, and they will have more to inflict casualties on us. We have to expect. I hope it won't happen, but we have always to be ready that these individual jihadists that we've seen won't get to the number of large pools, and then we will be engaged in a very, very difficult confrontation with them.
Dr. Phares, one thing that I think is going on in the background, I want your comment on this. I think the Iranians had something to do with that murder in Tel Aviv. I think they're trying to take the heat and put it every place else so they can look almost like an ally of ours and kind of take the heat off of the talks on their nuclear capabilities. Do you think?
Absolutely. This has been my talking point memo for over a year now, and it has been a part of my chapter in the Lost Spring. But again, last week, and then of course when this incident took place in Tel Aviv in Israel, it's immediate reaction, analytical reaction, because by now we know what I call how the industry of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Iran works. Whenever they are under pressure, if Iranian regime is under pressure, it's always good for them to have a re-explosion of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. That's off their back, and everybody's going. And Kerry, Secretary Kerry, instead of putting pressure on them, he will be traveling between Israel and Cairo to try to get to a ceasefire. Also, Gaza's Hamas organization has a direct interest. Every time they feel that they are under the pressure, this time by the Egyptians, I mean, last week the Egyptians were mounting a campaign against Hamas. How do they get out of this? By committing an act of terror inside Israel. There was no reason for that. Not even a tactical reason. There was a ceasefire, and they broke the ceasefire. So they know that by doing so, they're going to invite the Israelis automatically to retaliate. And when they do, it will escalate. And what happened at the end of the escalation, another ceasefire, and maybe a $50 million from Qatar or from the Iranians.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're having a conversation with Dr. Walid Phares, consultant to Congress and the Middle and European Union, and the author of a great book, Lost Spring. Dr. Phares, talking about Iran, do you think the administration is going to pretty much strike a deal just so they can, have that kind of on Obama's legacy?
Yes, I pretty much believe, because of evidence, that the administration do want to strike a deal at any moment they can. I mean, they could have done it months ago or years ago, but they want to make sure that this deal is serious, that the Iranians will deliver. Now, it's the Iranian leadership that is making the administration look bad here, because the administration has stopped its action in Syria, stopped its action in Iraq, delayed any serious action against the super arming of Iran, against the missiles program, against what the Iranians are doing in Yemen. All of that they stopped in the only hope that the Iranian leadership will tell them, okay, I'm making a concession. The Iranians are, dragging the administration in this negotiation, getting what they want on the ground in all of these countries and arming themselves and not making any concession on the nukes. So I think now that the administration is in a very weak position because they are at the mercy of Tehran saying yes or no, and we're going to meet now, we're going to meet next month. And once the Iranians will feel comfortable, they may give him an agreement which they would, cancel a few months later or after the administration is over. So I wouldn't think that the administration has the complete control over these negotiations.
Doctor, I think every leadership seems to make our leadership look bad and weak. Is our administration weak and unrecognized as a powerhouse around the world now?
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. It's not just about Iran but it's the Arab world. I mean, our allies, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, they all feel that we have abandoned them in front of the Iranian, threat, and the Egyptians felt that we abandoned them because of our partnership with the Muslim Brotherhood. And obviously, I don't want to even go over to Ukraine and Russia and China and describe how these powers that are competitive or hostile, if you want, in some cases, to the U.S. feel about our administration. They, look at Putin. Putin, he just sent his troops or his tanks, and he knows that we're not going to mobilize. I mean, the logic of the Cold War, if we say this is Cold War, we'd say, okay, during the Cold War, a Reagan or a Kennedy would mount a counter-mobilization. So mobilization versus mobilization, you stop a situation. We saw it in Berlin. We saw it in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Here, we are not mounting any mobilization. We're just putting sanctions. Sanctions with such powers, international powers, cannot operate, cannot be successful.
We're drawing red lines.
Yeah, we're drawing red lines.
We have been drawing red line after red line. Now it's like a rainbow of red lines, and it's not working.
Yeah, I think they're written in crayon, unfortunately. We've talked about this on the show before with you, and I've always thought that Israel, I'm surprised they haven't done anything, up to this point. But the comments made about Netanyahu, what do you think about that, in the administration? Well,
that's more of the culture now within the circles of the administration dealing with the Middle East and with Israel. And I bring it back to a higher level of how influential have been the lobbies since 2009, the Muslim Brotherhood lobbies, if you want. Qatar and Muslim Brotherhood and Morsi when he was in power. And then, of course, the pro-Iran lobby, including those interested in economic interests if we reconcile with the Iranians. That huge circle has been pounding against the Israeli-American traditional alliance and strategic alliance, so that there is now a consequence, psychological consequence. There is a ridiculing of Israel as an alliance, as an ally. In the same way, I will remind you, ridiculing General Sisi as president of Egypt, or ridiculing the Gulf. It's not just about Israel. There is a general attitude, these pro-American, ally to America powers, we could say anything about them, but there is always this respect to the Islamic Republic of Iran. There is always this respect to the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt. So, yes, it's a cultural change in the circle that deals with Middle Eastern affairs in the administration.
Dr. Phares, I know you have a class you have to teach in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for the time. We really, really want to have you back, especially if you've got this new book coming out.
Absolutely. I'm very happy that you gave me the opportunity. I will be actually happy to come back anytime. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Phares. So when you're out here in California, we'll do a little bike riding down on the beach.
Absolutely. I'll be very happy.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Current Radio News Talk 1180.